Majority Leader. NPP confers dates for constituency elections. That's what's there. The BNFT this morning reports that MIF wins Forbes Monaco Award as it prepares to re-engage on the listing of Ejapa royalties. Ejapa, is it back in Parliament? We don't know. To tax or not to tax, GRA in a fix over churches. And inflation has eroded workers' salaries, calls on employers to cushion workers. Only 6% of the 2 billion Ghana cedis NHIS fund was disbursed in 2021. The Finder newspaper, majority downplays minorities' injunction on e-levy implementation. 3 are in court. Dr. Yeboah, Santi Yeboah, heads Public Servants Housing Loan Scheme. Congrats to him. Dr. Bawumia urges Africans to embrace people of African descent, and $35 million vaccine production plant opens to produce essential drugs locally. President Akufo-Addo launched that yesterday. Sam George has some requests to make. Rehoboth Bridges housing deficit with 400 new affordable units. Question is, are they really affordable? The Republic Press this morning says Sakawa slay queens busted in U.S. indicted in $5 million fraud as Ghana conspirators sit on tentacles. NDC gurus descend on the AG for reprimanding colleague lawyers. And one day President Akufo-Addo commissions $35 million factory. Finally, the Supreme newspaper. NPP to regain trust of Ghanaians to break the 8. Nana Akomia says so. Breaking the 8 is attainable, but it requires hard work and unity. Chairman Odeneho to the NPP. $35 million 1D1F pharmaceutical factory commissioned at Ningo Pram Pram. Let's think development first, not partisan politics. Edem Agbana charges Afife youth. Your claims on GRA Express pay deal false. John Kuma shreds Sam George. My guest this morning is Mr. Franklin Kujo. He is the boss at Imani Africa and also lawyer Justice Abdullahi. He is a lecturer at the UPSA Law Faculty. He is also a private legal practitioner at the Crown Legal Bureau. Gentlemen, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
Franklin, how are you?
I certainly could be better, but good to hear your voice and see your face as well.
Franklin, Klosak is not happy with you.
Oh, I understand they are not happy with so many other people as well. Probably I was the one who, I don't think I was the one who led the first black, but it looks as if the trail has got a lot more angrier people as well. But that's understandable.
Mr. Isaac Bampoado says you should go and sleep because you have no locals to talk about their matter. What do you say?
Well, when I spoke, I slept, and I suspect other people decided to speak. That's why we are still having the conversation today. I've slept already.
But really, do you still hold the view after the explanations that the neutrality allowance should be cancelled?
Oh, well, I mean, I still hold the view. Look, my good friend, if we want to have a conversation about general remuneration, we should have. But to pick apart the principles that undergird the civil service and negotiate on each one of them as a basis for remuneration is quite frankly not the best at all. I have been telling people that since my government A-level days, when I learned that the principles that undergird the civil service are neutrality, anonymity, and permanency, I do not understand today that one group or a group of civil servants would decide that one of the principles should be up for negotiations as a basis for remuneration. I can't just accept that.
Well, but government knew all of this and still went ahead to sign a deal with them on in January. Would you fault the government for going to that deal, or would you say that they were perhaps under pressure, or what do you see?
I don't understand what pressure means here at all. I fault anybody who sat with the closer people to decide this. And you know, if it was the entire civil service, well, maybe I could understand the pressure. But I don't look. It was wrong. That's the point I'm trying to make. It was just simply wrong, and I'm sure it's part of the general conversations around remuneration in this country. We started a single spine, came to risk premium, and now we're having all these other, should I call them babies of the single spine system. I think we should separate general, discontent or discontentment with the levels of salary levels in this country from what, quite frankly, was an unnecessary arrangement. I called it fraudulent. I'm sure lawyer will not permit me to use such words, but I can understand that the arrangement itself is so wrong, and I base it on the premise of what I've said earlier, that I don't think the civil service was made or was christened to have its principles negotiated in that manner.
Interesting. Well, so, Counsel, good morning to you as well.
Yes, good morning, Johnny.
What are your views about this neutrality allowance, because CLOSAG is still on strike?
Johnny, if you noticed, I think it is the new system that the government is using to avoid the possibility of having a labor onslaught on the resources of the state. You notice that when UTAC went on strike, similar arrangements were made. It wasn't called by the same name, but I think it was called something to the effect that the explanation was that it was supposed to be used to pay for data sort of that we use for teaching students online.
Right.
So they couched a nice name for it and then gave it as an allowance. And with that, UTAC literally accepted and moved on, sort of awaiting the outcome of other matters that are still on the negotiation table. So it is from the same background that the government went into this negotiation. The idea is that, well, we can couch some form of allowance for you and give it to you as a top-up, rather than increasing the salary levels generally, because that way, then all other unions would also be up in arms and come attacking the state for increases in remuneration. So this is, if you want to call it, a smart way that the state is using to manage the general difficulties, economic hardships that labor is facing. And it's trying to find these nice ways of giving some of what labor is generally asking for, but without having to call it an increment in salaries, so that it doesn't spill over. Because the spillover effect is what government is trying to avoid. But it looks like eventually we may still end up there, because it looks like a deferment of the real problems of today. It will still come back biting us tomorrow, because after giving these allowances, it does not solve the problem of the lower remuneration. And so give yourself 6 months, maximum a year, labor will still come back fighting for an increment in salaries, because the salary levels are rather low. So despite the allowances that you couch with a nice nomenclature attached to the amount you give, people are still not happy with what they are receiving at the end of the day. And so these are expected.
Well, but so I want to get a sense of the labor onslaught that you spoke about, because since the year began, we've had, off the top of my mind, 6 or 7 strikes already on government. Is this something government is not doing right, or what?
I think it's part of the general economic difficulties. And trust me, we are likely to even witness more. I remember at the beginning of the year, that we are going to have the year of labor unrest in this country, when the president declared the year of roads. And I have not been wrong in my analysis that it's what we are witnessing. And it will only increase. It is not going to abate anytime soon. Because really, at the end of the day, I remember a point you made once, that what is supposed to take you home doesn't even take you to the trotro station. And so you end up going home dry. Now, if this is a circumstance, then you can be assured that everyone else would also come for his bite. And so until the general economic circumstances are improved, cost of living going down low, and maybe standard of living improving in a lot of ways, you are likely to witness more and more of these things going forward. And it is better we tackle the problems head on, rather than playing the blame games and blaming all manners of people. And now Russia is even denying being a contributing factor to our economic difficulties. Now, so really, we need to do better than what we are doing and put the Ghanaian at the center of affairs. Possibly, I noticed at the beginning of the year, the government attempted to cut down on emoluments for public servants, particularly those in government.
Right.
But those are tokenisms that would not solve the problem. They may be, they may not even amount to much, even though it sends a good political language out there. But it doesn't solve the problem, because the rot are in the leakages, what you may call corruption. That's where the major problems are. And so until we tackle that aspect of our life, our national life, we would be saddled with these challenges almost on a daily basis. Because the amount of money that goes out, the amount of wastage that we witness, it far exceeds cutting down on salaries and all these other matters that we are bringing up as a source of revenue, and for which we believe, for whatever reason, that is going to solve all our problems. We have a bigger problem to solve. And these tokenisms would not be the angle to tackle it from.
Right. Franklin, so how do we get out of this maze that government seems to have immersed themselves into?
Well, obviously, I'm not sure the government is quite happy with the current economic situation, partly due to its faults. And I suspect that they need to get out of this quagmire pretty soon. First things first, maybe this is not the time to talk about going back to the drawing table and rationalizing the salary mechanisms that we have. You know, I think the single spine was one of the most abhorring principles against economics that I've heard. And that's where the problem started. To think that, I mean, let's use a scenario where lawyer Justice Abdullahi has a degree, I also have a degree, but let's just take it that Justice does a lot more work. He does number crunching or probably doing legal analysis, and I dig pits, right? I dig holes for a living, or maybe water gardens at the Kumasi Parks and Gardens. The fact that I have a degree and Justice has a degree does not mean that we do same work. But the single spine was built on that faulty principle that once we have equivalency in terms of degrees, we should be paid the same. Okay. You are getting where I'm taking this.
I get it.
The productive elements of our economy are not properly valued and calibrated. That is why I got to a point we decided to introduce risk premium, because others started complaining that why is it that I do, well, I as a doctor has to be on call 24/7, and someone else, maybe a pharmacist, doesn't need to do all of that, but simply because we both spent 6 or 7 years in the school, then we need to be paid the same. So that's where the problem started from. So in order to get out, so then it's escalated, you know, then labor groups started negotiating for their own pecs. And now it's reached this level where UTAG may get their pecs, CLOSAG may, and as Justice is saying, other groups will start going for their bites. You cannot sustain that type of that scenario. There's no way you can sustain it. So the best thing to do, and like I said, maybe this is not the right time to do that, but this probably is the best time to have those difficult conversations. That look, we were faulty when we started this whole single spine thing, and it created all this wahala. So I don't know whether there's a quick fix to it, but certainly there's a need to start asking ourselves hard questions. The productive elements of our economy, we need to start calibrating and valuing them properly. Does the civil service contribute significantly to our economy?
Right.
Members of parliament, members of government, ministers, what's their value to the workforce, or should I call the productivity of the country? We need to start assessing everybody who works in the public enterprise based on their contribution to to the national productivity. If we manage to do that, then we are able to determine exactly what each member is worth and can take home. Of course, the general lack of course, nobody is satisfied with whatever salary they take home. But I suspect that we can begin that conversation about what exactly are you contributing to this economy? And that would be the basis for. I can hear some closer people and some people in civil service shouting and say, to hell with you. I mean, what do you think? Why are you coming to base our remuneration on the equivalency in terms of productivity? But that's the way it ought to be, really.
I see. Now, the question on my mind immediately is this. You hear government elements telling the striking parties that, well, we do not have what you're asking for at this time. John Kuma had said it. The Labour Minister had said it. So many people. But how does government convince the people that they do not have what they are demanding when they see that ex gratia, for example, has been approved, they see them riding their V8s, they see them enjoying everything else, and they tell them, we do not have what you're asking for? How do they convince them? What do you propose?
Well, that's a burden they carry and the cross they have to obviously bear. The fact of the matter is that if you are promising, if you are telling people that you get up their loins and you are loosening your belt, then obviously you are not in pole position to have a better negotiated, should I say, terms or negotiated terms out of the current quagmire. I suspect, Johnny, just as you started on this, this question, it is important that the person telling you to look up to the cross is actually reading the Bible as well. I do not understand or reading the Quran as well. So for me, I think there's a pretty straight answer. If you are telling people that you do not have the funds now and that they should bear with you, it presupposes that you are also getting up your loins and living within your means and cutting your cloth according to your coat, cutting your according to your cloth, rather. So it beggars belief that the kinds of things we are hearing in terms of the remunerations of state-owned enterprises, CEOs, and even these baby steps, I call them, from the government in terms of the cut they've announced, do not go far enough. And so partly, one of the reasons why people would then decide to negotiate on or ask for some increases is simply because they look up to the appointer or the people who manage the press, and they are seeing pledges, really.
Right.
I certainly think that we could have done a lot more by further reducing the number of ministries, making certain ministries just single ministers, and not having an army of people serving at the beck and call of ministers and all the state parastatals. I think we should definitely show some sort of regard when it comes to the way we manage our public purse.
I see. Counsel, step in for me. So you've heard Franklin. What do you also say?
Indeed, Franklin nailed it as I expected. I think the state needs to do more in securing the trust of the Ghanaian, and particularly when the government is calling on all of us to support in the economic recovery program. And if you expect me to support you in that light, I expect more from you, particularly when I see you living large and living better. And I am rather impoverished, continuously getting impoverished. I expect a lot from the state in order for me to be able to contribute more. At the end of the day, if we are building this for our collective good, then we must also see the sacrifices to be collective and not a sectional sacrifice from just a section of the society, particularly, and in most instances, those of us at the lower level. We are always the ones who are asked to contribute and who are asked to sacrifice it, not the other way around. It doesn't help in economic development and economic management. It must be a collective effort, and that collective effort must start from the top. Once the top appears to be doing what is right, I think we would all do the most appropriate things in order to push ourselves forward. Otherwise, the labor would always pretend to be working and be getting their food on the table from elsewhere. Then the quagmire will continue, the economic downturn, and everything else that we find wrong with our system will still continue. It will persist. so long as nothing right comes from the top. And I think we have to move on. It's been 30 years of building a good country, and I think we have a very good chance to do it better now than ever. So I expect more from the state. I expect without having to do politics, most of the promises that we've made, particularly by way of cutting down wastages and unnecessary costs, all of those, if you're able to sustain, this fight against wastages, I think we'll be able to do more for ourselves than blaming other people for our economic woes.
I see. Franklin, so at the heart of all of this economic recovery agenda and all what government is talking about is the concept they have tagged breaking the 8. Nana Kumia says, well, it is possible. I've seen also another gentleman talking about it, or didn't know talking about it. Breaking the 8, a reality or a myth?
Well, I guess breaking the 8 means that you have to show mettle. You have to at least serve the very basic economic indices that everybody lives by. I think it is quite fanciful to start thinking about breaking the 8 right now when you are yet to get yourself out of the economic, the entanglement in which we find ourselves. It could be a good wish, but I think that wish must be rooted in good deeds and deeds that people will see and say, oh, well, we'll give you a third thing. Look, a year and a half in politics is a long time. There are a lot of challenges ahead currently, obviously, and there could be many more. I think the ruling government should focus its attention on solving the current and present challenges or dangers that we face in order to avoid further economic atrophy. Once they get on that path, Ghanaians will be the best people to judge whether they need to give them a third term or not. But to currently make your legacy sound as though your legacy is going to be breaking the 8 without putting in a lot of the good work could be quite fanciful. And I think it's better to focus on the current challenges rather than start dreaming about breaking the 8.
Lawyer, breaking the 8, I will ask you the same question, a myth or a reality?
Well, anything is possible in politics, but I would have to admit that it's more difficult now, judging by our present circumstances. It's more difficult than possibly it was maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago. 2-3 years ago, I probably would have said a complete yes. But today, if what we are witnessing continues, I do not think, as indicated by most of these polling researchers, it's clearly likely not to be possible. But we have 2 more years ahead of us, or 3 to the next elections. Depending on how the performance and particularly in regards to the economic sector goes, I think it may be possible, or at least it will be a very difficult fight for the other side to win, if not breaking the 8. But the present circumstances, I think it will be almost impossible to convince even a kid that he can break an 8 with our present difficulties.
I see. Well, let's move on to our next issue, and I'll start this one with you, Counsel, because you are a lawyer. 3 Ghanaians have petitioned the Speaker of Parliament for the impeachment of the President regarding the conversations about Sewa Broni and the fact that the state apparatus or state security was used to perpetrate a certain crime against the lady, as she has alleged. We'll take a quick break. When we return, I will pick your thoughts on those matters and also Franklin's, and then we'll look at the response so far from some bigwigs within the NPP. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back, and thank you very much. My guest still on Zoom is Franklin Kujo of Imani Africa and Justice Abdullahi. He's a private legal practitioner with the Crown Legal Bureau. Also, he is a lecturer at the UPSA Law Faculty. Gentlemen, welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us.
Thank you so much.
Great. Counsel, I started with you. I mentioned that 3 Ghanaians have petitioned the Speaker of Parliament regarding the brouhaha, Sewa Broni, President Akufo-Addo, and they're asking for his head to be chopped, literally, and for him to be shown the exit. Will that petition stand, first of all, legally?
Well, As to the merit of it, would have to be determined by the committees. In fact, the Speaker will have to determine whether there is even any merit before he takes the next appropriate steps by forwarding it to the next stage. So really, literally, they would have to confirm whether or not, as the law says, that there is a prima facie case made out by these persons. And so a lot is dependent on the Speaker's decision. The Speaker's judgment would have a lot to do with this whole scandal. If it has to see the light of day, the Speaker would have to has a lot of role to play in this. The Speaker can easily shoot it down, and that may take another legal banter for it to see any life if it has one in the first place. And so it is not something that can easily be determined at this moment. But if you go by the numbers in Parliament, eventually what it means is that this will still be completely thrown out. However, it will leave behind it that scandal, if you want to call it, legacy of the president being the first person to have undergone this impeachment process since the Fourth Republic, and that would be a good record to set by anyone. And so, whichever way it goes, depending on the mischief that is intended, knowing very well that the president will not go out of office by virtue of this petition, considering the numbers that we have in Parliament. So Parliament has a lot to do with getting the president out. It is, in fact, the entire process of Parliament to determine whether the president will eventually be removed or not. And that is done by secret balloting when it eventually, if it goes to that level. And of course, we need to point out that the president will have a say with his lawyers ably assisting him if it comes to that point. But my honest view is that because of the numbers we have in Parliament, and I do not believe that the members of the MPP would in any way, whether by secret ballot or otherwise, if it comes to the point of voting or vote against the president. So eventually what it means is that this will be much ado about nothing. However, it would have left that legacy, that bad legacy, if you want to be fair about it, that this is the only president under the Fourth Republican Constitution who have undergone this scandal and who was almost removed for such a scandal. And that will never be a legacy that anyone would want to leave behind. And so what this implies is that, of course, it sends a bad signal out there as well. I know very well that whichever way it goes, if the president or the members of the executive are unable to shoot this down right from the point of the petition being with the speaker and they entertain the political bit of it by allowing it to mature into a more into a bigger fish, I think they would have a very difficulty in containing the scandal that would follow afterwards. And so I think the political part of it has to wait from now, from the executive angle, to ensure that they're able to contain it before it gets to the level where they may not be able to do anything about because it will not help in any way.
I see. Franklin, so a Deputy General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party, NPP, Nanobri Boahina, said the party is not bothered over the petition against President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo after Evelyn Sewa-Broni alleged a robbery attack on her by some security operatives. He says they should rather wait for the outcome of the petition before Parliament. This is on page 9 of the Republic Press. What do you say regarding the posture of the party and the government, especially when somebody is alleging that crime had been perpetrated by state institutions and state security operatives against a private citizen? What do you say?
Well, I'm just baffled and worried that the police, the part that had to do with the police is probably not conclusive. I don't know whether there's been any detailed report concerning I think the lady must have reported to a number of police stations or so.
Right.
And so I rather start from that point. What exactly did the police say? Do we have any evidence that they want to press charges and go forward with the investigations? I mean, that's why I think the real question really is. As of this particular one, of course, a lot of politics could be read into it as well. And as many people are saying, I think the ruling government would think that this is a political step rather than what the legal steps should rather, should I call it, the normal course of things should play out. So for me, I'm rather questioning what the police has said. And to that extent, in fact, I do not know what the police have said. That's something that I suspect we need to see.
We haven't heard from the police officially. I know that there's also a recording that former CID boss, now EOCO boss, Madam Tiwa Judankwa, was in that meeting, Hobson Atoye and Miss Edu. And the police has really not made a public pronouncement about it. The National Security Ministry has also not spoken about it. And that's where the concern is, that if somebody repeatedly says that the state was used to perpetrate crime against an individual and the state is not speaking, then there's a problem.
Right. And it's a huge problem. And I cannot understand why the state apparatus, especially the police service, would not speak on this matter. In fact, we don't know. Maybe we should ask questions of the IGP as well. What is the state of investigation? Because the lady must I had responded to a particular police station, and in this case, the EOCO boss that is alleged to be part of a conversation where these matters were brought to a head. So I'm quite incapacitated to understand why the police service has not said a thing. We do not know the state of play, which is why the guys who have decided to petition may have a field day, at least politically, even if this does not go forward at all.
Interesting. Well, Council, so then it comes back to your table. Conversations have begun across many divides, and you can hear the rejection of the petition right from the get-go. Should we be doing that? Should it be in the president's main interest to have this cleared off the table, especially when text messages purported to have come from him have been shown publicly?
Indeed, it is not in the political interest of the president, but or the executive, for this matter to be heard or be decided on his merits. It's not in the interest of them at all. But I think if anything has to be done, the president will be more interested that the state apparatus that are guilty of or alleged to be guilty of their implicity in the ongoing scandal would be the most appropriate agencies to handle this, at least from the political angle. Anything that is anything short of this will be more scandalous. If you're having a public inquiry into this, you rather give more attention to this lady politically than she probably may deserve, and that will be more scandalous to the president and the entire executive in general. Let's not forget that we had a similar scandal from the office of the National Security Ministry, and so this coming up in the second term of the president. I mean, when we have had one in the first term. And now, with the president himself involved, I do not think politically anyone would allow this to continue. So that is a reality on this one. And so it is expected, as we are already witnessing, that members of the MPP fraternity would do everything to shoot it down. And that is what I expect them to do on the reality side of it. However, do we allow it to go simply because it involves the president? It's not something that I would definitely endorse, because I would rather that we have an independent inquiry into this. When an allegation of this nature is made against the office of the president and the national security and the police, and they all appear to be helpless as to how to handle it. Let's all remember that the president cannot be prosecuted under our laws, not until he leaves office. And if he leaves office within 3 years, if you do not prosecute him, he walks completely free, as free as an angel. And so there's only a small window of opportunity, something that I completely disagree with, that I do not think it should still remain part of our books, really, not to prosecute our president for whatever reason, particularly when it comes to crime, the commission of crime. I don't think I've had occasion to repeatedly say that it's not helpful, particularly because of the nature of our governance structure. If you do, people, particularly in the office of the president, does a lot of things that are sometimes are not good enough, and they just simply work because you cannot prosecute him. And when they leave office, nothing really happens to it. And so we should have that change of mindset and change of thought regarding that part of it. But maybe that conversation may not be a conversation for today. But because the police and the other security agencies in the past have never done anything in this regard, the best option out there for all of us would be a public inquiry, so that we understand really in reality how the state apparatus has been used against a citizen, regardless whether it's Sawa Bruni or whoever the victim may be. I do not think we have to endorse or be lukewarm about having our citizens being victimized simply because they were in one form of relationship or the other with the president or the vice president or anyone. I think it is better we deal with this matter holistically, and doing it would be better. It would be better done publicly, so that the entire truth will be known. If the president comes out clean, I think we will all hail him. I have no doubt that the president may come out clean on this, but the political will to get this done should be the decision to be made today, and we have to do it now, just so the lingering questions that are in the minds of people and the ongoing conversation that takes our minds off from the most important aspects of our lives will be re-engineered and maybe refocused on those other important things than whether or not the president had a girlfriend, or whether or not the state was used as a machinery to target and victimize this person. I do not think it's helpful. The state cannot be a party to any form of crime. And so the moment this happens, it becomes a very serious matter that we should all ensure that we investigate and bring out the truth out of it. Because really, we pay taxes and contribute our various quotas to the state for the protection. But that's the only thing we get. It's the only thing we get as citizens from the state. The level of the protection and the welfare. And so if these two are undermined, then there is no basis to be part of this the system called a country. Because this is the only thing you get as a citizen of any country, the protection and the welfare system. If you lose these two, and we are already struggling with the welfare part of it. So if the protection that should be afforded us, the state itself is coming after us, please, there's a very serious question to be asked, and somebody must be giving answers.
I see. Well, frankly, I bring you in now, and we'll hear government officials and government functionaries talking about the fact that we need to speak well about Ghana and to advertise Ghana to the rest of the world. If this public inquiry, which Justice Abdullah is asking for, which would be the only one to settle the matter, petition and all of that, should we be having a public hearing of this matter in a bid not to give Ghana a bad name?
Well, the fact that we want to market Ghana does not mean that the rule of law should be suspended. I do not want to believe that is what we want to do. And for me, if the allegations that especially the lady had made concerning the attempts to gag her are not attended to, then clearly this will linger, and I don't think the president wants to leave such a legacy. Not at all. So anyhow this is dealt with, I think it will not to the benefit of the brand Ghana.
Anyway, well, let's move away from that quickly and also have a conversation about the hardship that people are complaining about. Most people are complaining that they cannot survive at this time. TUC, for example, is asking for more money for workers, and you can hear the call here and there. Are we being too hard on the government?
Well, That's probably a trick question. Every government goes through this type of phase, right? And I think that what has particularly made this situation a bit uncomfortable for the current government is because of even though there are headwinds that are coming from global, within the global scheme of things. Somehow, some of the things they themselves said that they want to move away the economy from taxation to production.
Right.
And they've done so A, B, C, D. The economy had grown by certain leaps and bounds. Then all of a sudden, when these headwinds had come, not all of them are stronger headwinds. For an economy that had become so resilient, as we were told, we shouldn't really have been faltering to the levels that we have. And so that is how come people are asking for all kinds of perks. And I can understand that the economic situation has also not... Clearly, there are challenges with the economy. And I cannot fault anybody who is asking for some levels of increase when it comes to salary. Obviously not the CLOSAC neutrality allowance, but I can understand that the general economy is in a turmoil. Indeed, prices have skyrocketed, and clearly a lot of it could be blamed on the current management of the economy as well, only because of the pronouncements that were made by the current managers. I do not think that it is largely unfair by most labor groups to demand for more, especially when we've just discussed, Lawyer Abdullah and myself and you, that it does not appear that the ruling government or the government itself is interested in cutting back as much as it should. And so it's sending the wrong signals to people who definitely, especially labor, that is asking for...
But frankly, sorry, the government says all appointees of the executive are going to take a 30% cut of their salaries or earnings. The Council of State says they're going to take 20% cut off their allowances. Is that not good enough?
Oh, that's indicative, and it's probably showing some sort of indication that we want to cut. But you see, like I said, if you look at the bulk of the expenses this government has made in the last 5 years, a significant amount of it could still be reduced, and most of it are actually within the realms of should I call them the high investment, not necessarily investment, the high, some of the infrastructure investments definitely ought to be called into question. I mean, if you look at the flagship project, we were expecting to see some significant reviews. That's where the government of the matter really is. I mean, that's where the big kahuna really sits.
Right.
So this 30% cut across board may be indicative and may be useful, but when you look at it, in fact, in terms of the quantum, it is quite a drop in the ocean. And I think that we should have done a lot more by rationalizing a lot of the expenditure when it came to the flagship project. That would have sent some real signal that we were interested in doing some real cuts. And maybe that could have catered for quite a number of the ask from some of the labor groups.
Mm-hmm. Well, Council, so there's another conversation on the streets talking about the fact that people are taking advantage of our present circumstance to inflate prices of goods and services that they provide. So there should be a certain standardization, or if you like, control pricing of goods on the market. Do you agree?
Noni, without pretending to be an expert in the economy, the moment you bring in control prices, you send a wrong signal that you've lost control really over economic circumstances. If you've not lost control, you will never want to have a centralized systems of controlling prices, because really market forces naturally stabilizes prices. No one wants to sell 2 items in a month when he could have sold 20 or more, given lower prices and stronger living conditions. So the moment you do that, you tell the entire world that really you've lost it, and you have no business being in office. If that's what you think would be the most appropriate means of controlling prices. Remember, at the time this government assumed office, there was no control prices, and things were okay. So if you are bringing in control of prices, a centralized form of controlling prices, you are indeed affirming that you no longer have control over the economic circumstances of your own country. And so you have to put in place rather those fundamentals that are able to sustain a stabilized market and prices. And this is easily done by stabilizing your economy, by ensuring that your currencies are stable, by ensuring that your exports are very good enough, and your exports will naturally inure to the benefits of your currency. And so, and that automatically also empowers your indigents to be able to do what is appropriate for them to do. And the rest of the items come in naturally. Like our Vice President put it, when the fundamentals are strong enough, the rest will simply be good without you having to do much about it. Because the market knows itself. The demand and supply phenomenon are able to ensure that prices are not skyrocketed given a particular phenomenon. And so that is a wrong call, and that is not something that we should even consider doing at all. And I do not think it's on the table.
I see. Frankly, let me wrap up with you and counsel on this note. So all this, the availability of food, affordability of same, fuel prices here and there, power cuts here and there, cost of living, and all of those questions. People are calling on the president to do a reshuffle of his ministers because in their eyes, this whole pack and the whole team are the ones that have brought us here, and that we need fresh breath in the executive. Do you subscribe to that thought?
You know, in economies where clearly there are challenges, when there's a reshuffle, it has some sort of impact. The question I have for you, Johnny, is that do you really think that if there's a reshuffling as we speak right now, anything significant will change? I have my doubts. Unless, of course, we are calling for some deeper cuts, and maybe the president comes and says, look, I'm reducing my ministers from the 80-something to about 50. You know, that sends a lot of signals. And if we have musical chairs around, clearly speaking, in the current scheme of things, I'm not too sure anything significant will happen. It's the same thing when let me sound a bit grim. You know, there are certain parts of the world when the president is sick, the economy takes a tumble. Clearly, the markets respond. In this part of our world, the president can even do anything he wants. He can even stop work for a year. I'm not sure if we have significant impact.
I see. Just down the line, do you agree?
Indeed, I am in all fours with Franklin on this. We've witnessed in our history our presidents going on leave. Elsewhere, that's unheard of. Our presidents always go on leave and nothing happens. In fact, it doesn't affect anything in any way. It's as if we are on autopilot. With or without a president, everything can still move on the way it ought to be. But that tells you how sometimes insignificant our president is to the economic circumstances of the country. If everything was working well, in fact, if everything was working well, our systems were well structured, we would not need a president to order an IGP to arrest an ordinary criminal. We would not need a president to order an IGP to entertain the thought of arresting a minister for having engaged himself in a corrupt deal or shady deal one way or the other. But unfortunately, it appears that that is what we do in this country, and that's because so much power is concentrated in the office of the president. And so, but unfortunately, the economic powers are not in the same way concentrated in the hands of the president, and which is why you may even call for maybe a possible overhaul of the entire economic management team rather than simply reshuffling ministers. Reshuffling ministers, for me, sends the signal that what you feel or strongly think that a particular minister can perform better in another ministry. But I do not think that's the kind of situation we find ourselves in. We find ourselves in a situation where we probably do not need some of the people within the economic management team at all. We do not need them there because they probably have outlived their usefulness. And we need maybe a new thinking, we need a new thought, new hands, new ideas, fresh and out-of-the-box decisions, which can possibly turn things around faster and quicker. Because we are in that urgent circumstances that we can no longer wait for anyone or anything. We need to take that bold decision that will take us to the promised land. And the way we are going about things now may not be the way to go until we change the people within the economic management team. Reshuffling them, you will still have the same persons within the same within the circle, except that they'll be wearing different hats, and that will not help us in any way.
Thank you very much, Justice Abdullahi. He's a private legal practitioner with the Crown Legal Bureau in Accra. He's also a lecturer at the Law Faculty at the UPSA. And joining me on the other line is Mr. Franklin Kujo of Imani Africa. Gentlemen, thank you very much for spending your morning with us. We are grateful, and have a lovely day.
Thank you so much. Johnny, I have to emphasize that I love Franklin. That's the proposal.
Yes, well, I'm encouraged by advocacy, and we should break bread one of these days.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would love to.
I would like to come and cover the event, the breaking of bread. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good morning.
Thank you. Have a blessed one.
Great. And that's Franklin Kujo there of Imani Africa and Justice Abdullah of the UPSA Law Faculty and Crown Legal Bureau. Happy birthday to my brother, Moro Audu. You're 44 years today. Live long, my brother, and stay strong. Happy birthday one more time to you, Moro Audu. Also, happy birthday to you, Desmond Boachi Dankwa, a.k.a. Abu. Well, they say your name is Abu the Thief. I don't know why you want to be called Abu the Thief. Desmond Boachi Dankwa, happy birthday to you. Also, a belated one to Petrosol. Brother at Petrosol Ghana Limited, Godwin Placé, from your brother Oscar. You wish you well. A belated one to Honorable Julius Deborah. He's a former Chief of Staff, also from Minister for Local Government. Honorable Julius Deborah, belated happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Mr. Paul Anku. He is a businessman in Accra with the LS Group. May God continue to bless you and strengthen you. This from your daughter, Queen Cell. And also a happy birthday to well, Mr. Polanco, you have too many of this one. Well, Queen Cell of Adentan constituency sent you this one. If it's your birthday as well, happy birthday to you. And congratulations to James Vare Kamar and the Harmonious Choral. Yesterday was an amazing performance and concert there. Also, thank you to Soul Winners, to Kokwi Salome, and to Uncle Atu. Yesterday was a beautiful evening. Rainy, cold, but sweet music. We'll see you after the break.